Hey there, Game Masters. Lark here with another episode of Boss Battle. This episode was inspired by a comment from Deadpool 522. So if you have any ideas on how to make future boss battles or want to know how you would play it, be sure to leave a comment below. This week, the Mindflayer. Now, the Mindflayer is another one of our more intelligent, higher level creatures, so I think the setup is super important on top of just the boss battle. So this episode, we're going to start off by looking at a 3-act system that I always apply to each night of gameplay, and then we're going to take that 3-act system and we're going to set up a Mindflayer boss. Finally, we'll use our 3-phase system for the boss battle itself to challenge even higher level player characters. Let's start off. When you're setting up an intelligent creature as a boss, or when you're trying to set up something that may be used for future boss battles later, I recommend having some sort of a plot that gets the players interested. However you connect it to their characters, be it a religion or a flaw or ideal of your players, make that part of it. A great example for this one is we're going to say that there is a town that the players have come to, and 10 to 15 people, maybe that they have interacted with in the past, have gone missing. People don't know where they've gone. And we'll say for this, it's mostly people on the south side of town that have been going missing. If you're running a really dark campaign, you can have the elderly going missing, you can have children going missing, and definitely player characters that people have interacted with, maybe shop owners that could have been named. If you're running a more light-hearted adventure, then maybe you have some criminals, some murderers go missing, maybe a jail cell, all of a sudden all the prisoners are gone, there was a jailbreak. This could be an interesting plot point that will lead us to our Mindflayer, but doesn't necessarily seem like a Mindflayer right away. So Act 1 is where we begin. There will be obvious disappearances that nobody has an explanation for right now, except for maybe a few people. And as your players start to seek out what is happening and asking people who have gone missing, there's going to be one rumor that seems to repeat itself. If you have looked at all into the supernatural of alien abductions and that sort of thing, use people's descriptions of that sort of occurrence as an example for how the townsfolk are responding to this. Maybe they see strange floating things in the night. Maybe they see them with tentacles floating beneath them, almost as if that they're drifting across the ground while their tentacles move in a walking manner. Something strange like that. It doesn't have to make total sense, and it can be a little off key of what's actually happening, because this is a chance for the party to get an idea of what's happening, not necessarily know exactly what is happening. For this, a great example is a creature called the Grell. You don't have to use these, but I think they're a great thrall for Mindflayers to have initially, where Grell will float into the town and find further thralls for the Mindflayer to then bring in and convert. This will also give the party an obvious lead on what they should do. All they have to do is stake out the south side of town, and they can work their way throughout Act 1, waiting for this Grell, killing it, and then finding out that they've got some strange aberration here. Now, assuming the party does kill the Grell, the Mindflayer only had one of them that was bringing all of its thralls in, so now it's going to have to send its thralls. If the party goes seeking where the Grell came from, or maybe finds some way to track it back to its lair, then we can get right to Act 2 in the Mindflayer's caves. If not, if they're not sure what to do after they kill the thing, the next morning that the Grell does not return, all the missing townsfolk, maybe except a few kids or important NPCs that you want the party to really have to rescue, walk back into town. And they walk like zombies. Their clothes are torn. If you're running a darker campaign, maybe they're nude, like a lot of alien abductions, say the people, I came back and my clothes were gone and that sort of thing. Whatever the case, make it strange and discomforting as the people walk back into town. But when the party goes to talk to them, or when villagers go to talk to them, they're going to thrash out like zombies. Now it's going to be up to the players to decide, do we kill these townsfolk, these kids, these elderly, or do we try to stop them? If there's 10 to 15, that can be a lot of people for one party to hold all at once, but they will have the townsfolk help. Either way, whether they get a hold and they're able to stop the attack, or if they kill all of the returned zombified thralls, what's going to happen is that the people that all came back, that started attacking the townsfolk, once they are slain, lay down on the ground, they start to shake, they start to spasm, they start to foam at the mouth, their eyes start to bleed, and one by one, boom, heads start to pop. And when they pop out, tiny brains with legs start running across the ground, attacking other townsfolk. And this is a whole other set for the players to deal with. This is our Act 2, dealing with these brains, killing those off for sure, doing everything they can to stop them. They tried to save the townsfolk, but it wasn't enough. They ended up popping anyway. They got to kill all these creatures, and they're not going to kill them all. Some of them are going to get back to the cave to report to your Mindflayer, who you haven't even named as a boss yet, but your players, if they have some meta knowledge, they may know where this is headed at this point. Super eldritch horror, though. Feels great to have once friendly people suddenly die in front of you after you try to save them, or having to kill them and then having them attack anyway, even after the death. It makes for an awesome Act 2. Be that in the town, or, if the girl gives you the information, in the Mindflayer's lair. Either way, that Act 2 should be enough to give you a clue to where the Mindflayer is, and that there's a higher power behind this whole thing. At least one brain has to get away. If your players are super great at killing swarms, have these things spread out immediately, attacking innocent civilians, and some of them running back to the caves. This will give the party a chance to save the civilians, and then, because these creatures aren't that strong, and then have something to track back to the caves. Once we get to the caves, we get into Act 3. All right, before we jump into Act 3, the boss battle, we got to take a look at our creature that we're looking at, the Mindflayer. Now, as always, we're going to max out the Mindflayer's hit points. He's got a pretty small level of hit points for a CR7, but that is going to be part of our strategy. Because a creature with an intelligence of 19, this close to the maximum human potential, would be a genius. Maybe not Stephen Hawking, if we're saying Stephen Hawking is like a 20, but he's certainly beyond a chess master. He understands strategy, and he understands human behavior. He's intelligent enough to have read how adventurers work, considering how prominent they are in the world. This world. This fantasy realm. He may even know a thing or two about the party, and that's where things get fun. Now, as a dungeon master, this can sometimes be hard to roleplay, because you are not, maybe you are, but I'm not. You are not necessarily an intelligence 19, like peak human performance. You may not even be smarter than some of your players, which can be challenging. If you find that your players are outsmarting you and their characters are not intelligence 19, don't worry about that. Metagame. Anything that your players do or start planning on doing, because your Illithid is a chess master, he knows what they would try. He knows the obvious things that they would use. And if the party finds out that you are using meta knowledge to defeat the creature, and they start trying to use meta knowledge to defeat him, just everything they say, listen to, and assume the Mindflayer already knows it. If they're having any of these conversations in its lair, he's got telepathy. So not only does he know it, but he hears them thinking it before they even have a chance to say it. Feel free to metagame with this, with an intelligence this high. I try not to cheat the players, but I do steal some meta knowledge to use against them. Now, being a spellcasting type, he's going to want to keep space, distance, and he's also going to want to keep numbers on his side. He will not want to be outnumbered, as he would understand the action economy of battle. I know it's kind of a metagame sort of thing, but he would know that if he's being attacked by 4 to 7 people, he has less chances to fight back than they have chances to attack him. He would recognize that numbers is an advantage. Even if he has a queen on his side of the chessboard, them having 7 knights can pose a problem. Another key factor for the Mindflayer is that he values his life. He is not going to, he, she, I've been saying he, it, they, I don't know what to call these things. They don't really have genders. So I'm going to say they. The Mindflayer, they would want to fight for their life, and they would want to avoid dying whenever possible. So the Mindflayer is going to have an escape plan in case things go wrong. Just like in chess, it is better to draw than to lose the game. Another fun thing to do is to have the Mindflayer seek out advantageous terrain. He wants every advantage he can have, so have his caves and caverns set up so that he has an advantage, and we'll get to that during the second phase, maybe even the first phase of our combat. Finally, the philosophy of an alien mind. We have this concept of good and evil, and we have labeled a lot of things as good and a lot of things as evil, and it becomes important in this game. However, with an alien mind, I love the idea of changing what is good and what is evil. Maybe to a creature like this, curiosity is the ultimate good, to horrid levels. Experimenting on the living to see how they react, what they'll do, what will happen, that is purely good. And maybe to them, fear is purely evil. Being too afraid to ask the question, being too afraid to take that step, being too afraid of what lies behind the door. That he can see as absolute evil. So when the players come questioning what's going on, who's doing this, the Mindflayer may have great respect for that. Amazing, wonderful. They may cheer on the party in their endeavor. But when they find out that the party fears death, that the party fears losing their friends, that they fear what might happen to the town if they leave and the job is undone, that is evil, and the Mindflayer must destroy that evil in his mind. Playing with the philosophies in this light can really make your character have an engaging reason to fight the party and want them dead. Okay, so now we've got our creature mapped out. Let's get into phase 1 of this combat. Phase 1, the creature is going to try to do its best to not engage the party and to learn if they are curious or if they are fearful. Are they good or are they evil? Who has wandered into my home? And are these the people that my little brains warned me about? I would recommend having, if you want to have a more mansion-esque type of layer, that's fine, where you have the paintings with peephole eyes for the player to look through. If you have a dark cavern or cave, have it speckled with holes that lead into other chambers. Small holes, just big enough to see through, so it's dark on the other side, and the party can only see through a couple holes at a time if they have dark vision or a torch and they get close to the wall. It's going to be difficult to see into the other rooms. And these can be to the sides, below, or even above the party. So all directions there are holes. As they enter this first chamber, no combat right now, unless this is the end of your Act 2 and the players followed some brains here or engaged the thralls here. Then once all that stuff is dead, the Mindflayer will start to ask them questions. Again, in his mind, in their mind, curiosity is a pure sign of goodness. And for this to be a moral creature, they would believe that asking questions is the best way to show that they are good. Who are you? Why are you here? Who is the strongest amongst you? What are you? Keep asking questions and have a short list at the ready. And the party will get no information on where the creature is from these questions, because all the questions will take place in the players' minds. Be sure to describe that they are not hearing a voice coming from anywhere. They hear it in their minds. All this guy has to do is see them through one of the peepholes to be able to talk to all of them telepathically. Let the Mindflayer react to the players as well if they do give answers. If they give answers, he should be appeased by any questions that they give back to him, but he should become disgusted or frustrated with any sign of fear or discern for what he is planning. If the party feels like, you know what, this Mindflayer needs to die because he will do this, that may be a sign of fear to the Mindflayer, not just cold, calculated intent, which is what the Mindflayer sees itself doing. At some point, your party should come to the conclusion that this creature must be found and then must be killed. And when they have reached that conclusion, be it out loud or you can see it in the party's minds, the Mindflayer knows about it. And that is when it's going to brain blast them through one of the peepholes. It will use that hole to be able to use a cone attack, which the Mindflayer has, to do massive damage to the whole party, possibly stunning them. Again, he's not going to want to get involved in a melee at all. He's going to use his environment to outsmart and continue to damage the players. Now, he knows that it takes a second for his mind to re-soften, for the static to go away, to be able to do this again, similar like to a dragon's breath. And he will give himself that time by changing what room he's in. All right, phase 2 of combat. This is what I have laid out here. When the party pushes deeper into the layer to find the Mindflayer, they will eventually find the room. If you want to have smaller battles in between, if you feel that's necessary, that's fine. But I want to get right to phase 2, where the creature decides to even out the numbers a little bit. The Mindflayer will have a creature in some sort of a cage. And when the players arrive, they find it casting some sort of a spell on what could be, if you want, a local creature, maybe a unicorn, an owlbear, a grizzly bear if you want to go something more down to earth. Or you can even do something more alien, like a Zord or a gibbering mouther or just an amalgamation of limbs and mouths that it's been experimenting on. Whatever you want to do, you don't even have to name the creature. You can just describe it as some sort of combination of parts of different animals. The Mindflayer is casting some sort of a spell, and as the players walk in, he turns over his shoulder and you can see his tentacled face. For the first time, you get a look at the creature, and it speaks in their minds again, which confirms the voice they heard before is this creature. As he does so, he pulls open the cage and he moves out of the way. The creature's eyes suddenly flash the same color as the Mindflayer's as it steps out of the cage to engage the party. Now, technically, creatures can only concentrate on one spell at a time. And I know that illithids can levitate at will, but I assume that's still concentration. If you don't want to play it that way, if you want them to float, he should definitely start to float away. But if you want to play it a little more rules as written, which is totally cool, he's going to step behind the monster that he is now dominating. That's right, he will not try to dominate a player, because there's a chance that would fail, and that's a waste of a spell, and he would not take that risk. He will dominate a creature that you can make roll awful because you are the dungeon master, and it will automatically fail, and if you need other reasons for that, he's already thralled, he's already connected, he's got advantage on dominating on whatever you want to do, he dominates this creature. Now the player's got to deal with this, and as this creature goes in to tear into them, the players have to make a decision. For phase 2, do we focus on killing this, or do we chase down the Mindflayer as he tries to make his escape? It's an interesting question. Your players may do something very different from my players, which is okay. Let the players do what they feel is right. There's no wrong answer here. If some of them want to come to the side and engage the Flayer, he still has Dominate Monster. He can turn and crush them. But here's my thought. If I were in a fight and I got hit by an arrow, if I got stabbed, I would very quickly want to change tactics. Even if it was a minor wound, I would very, very quickly want to change tactics. I am not looking to cut it close. I am not looking to get bloodied. I have a self-preservation instinct that I want to stick to, and I'm going to think this Mindflayer has the same one. If the Mindflayer gets hit even once, it will drop Dominate Monster, and you can have the monster still attack the players. Maybe it won't be direct towards a caster or towards an archer like it was before. It'll attack them at random, but this will give the Flayer the chance to levitate, to make some space, to create some distance, to get away from a melee if it got stuck in one, and to float where it wants, to continue to cast its cone of Brain Blast, or Mind Blast, or whatever it is, to blast everyone at once with heavy damage, possibly stunning them. Moving on to phase 3. If at any point it is able to stun and isolate a creature, maybe an archer was trying to get as far away as possible, or a caster was, and it realizes that person is stunned, it will immediately float over and start to eat this person's brain, which will give the party a tough decision now. Oh shoot, I'm being mauled by a gibbering mouther owlbear dragon, and my friend's having their brain eaten. If the person's already stunned, the elephant can eat the brain pretty quick, so they're going to want to jump in on that quickly. As soon as the elephant is hit again, he's changing plans. If he's already been hit multiple times and he's getting close to being bloodied, he is going to get out of there. Just like I would. I would not want to stay if I have the ability to break out a tuning fork, ring it against the wall, and vibrate into another plane. This is one of the few times that I would recommend in a boss battle, unless the party can kill the creature in a round or two, let him escape. Let the illithid go. If you're a great DM, you may even name the illithid or have it reveal its name for the party's earlier questions. Phase 3, the illithid is gone. This creates an awesome problem to deal with later for your party. And if you want to get into illithids and hive minds and everything that comes with it, this is a great introduction to a much bigger, harder, higher level campaign. Being a party at this level, they may have access to things like Counterspell. And if your illithid is smart, they may have a few potions in their lair that they can use to heal up. They may have a couple tuning forks that they can use for their spell. But if the party is able to counter them and kill them, let them have that victory. Just because you'd like to create a bigger story doesn't mean it has to be with this illithid. The Mindflayer can die here if the party is strong enough to counter all of its magics, if they are fast enough, if they are effective enough to prevent it from doing what it intends to do. have the freedom to let your creature die here or to escape and become a greater villain later. All right, quick recap. We've got 3 acts. People are missing in town. We find an alien creature. That's Act 1. Act 2, we are dealing with the thralls either in the town or in the cave, depending on what your party does. And finally, Act 3, the boss battle, where we deal with the giant monster. Awesome, simple evening. You can do that in 3 hours, no problem. During the boss battle, we've got our 3 phases that I love to talk about. I think they're very important. Phase number 1, the questions. The creature wants to learn more about them, and it hits them with a brain blast. Teaches them what they can do. Part number 2, the experiment. Now it starts to use its creature to fight against the party while it watches what they do and sends more blind blasts. Phase 3, the results. Just like any good scientific method, we question, we experiment, and we have results. The results should be, you are this powerful and your party can do all these things. Good to know. Ding! Hit that planar fork and phase out of this plane. But the results could be disastrous, as the Mindflayer is defeated, falls to the ground, and is maybe even eaten by the creature that it once controlled. Whatever the case, this should make for an awesome evening. If you have any other ideas for games like this, be it low level or high level, leave them in the comments below. Thank you again, Deadpool522, for this idea. I had a ton of fun with this one. Sorry it took so long if you're waiting for it, but this will make for a great evening, and it can set us up for even stronger Mindflayer enemies. If you do run this Mindflayer, be sure to let me know in the comments, and I will play you later.